Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Brett Tadlock, TN Artist. If it's your first time here, again, welcome. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll watch the video and leave a comment below and let me know any feedback or suggestions you have for videos of the channel. So today's video that I'm going to work on is kind of breaking down how I completed a commission. I had a client that wanted to have, basically the request was just a picture of a painting of a wolf howling at the moon, and that was kind of it. So I had a lot of leeway to do this, and so I made this painting here, which then I kept the rights to be able to do prints of it on my shop. And so I have this over on my Redbubble shop. If you ever want to check that out, you can jump over here and see a lot of my different artwork and stuff there that you could help support the channel. And at the time of this recording, they're running a special. So I have a lot of different stuff in here, prints and things that I've played around with and stuff like that. So you can, there's a lot of different options here to help support the channel. But anyway, so the point is that I asked all subscribers, I said, hey, would you guys like to know how I painted this and for me to make a video on it? And they said yes. So I'm going to walk you through my process for what I did for this, so that way we can you can maybe recreate something similar for yourself. So the first thing I did was start with a canvas. Now this is the canvas I designed it for, was a 16 by 20, because those are easier to have prints made of. You can have them made just about anywhere. But this is an 8 by 10 and a little bit lower resolution, just so my recording software doesn't cause as much issues for it. So starting with a white canvas, first thing I want to do is get rid of the white canvas. So I'm going to take a blue that is very not too dark, not too bright kind of thing, and so just going with this blue that's right around in here, and going to fill the canvas to get that. Now, the thing to remember is that if you're going to work on this canvas, as long as you're working on this layer, everything here is considered to be wet paint, so it's going to interact a little bit with the stuff that's coming in on it. So that's something that's kind of important when it comes to doing stuff, for knowing how that works. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my custom brushes, and I have several different types that I've done. If you've not got my brushes, you can get a lot of them for free over on Gumroad. You can there is a set that you can pay for that I update. Originally it had like about 70 different stencils and brushes in it. It now has well over 80 because I update it routinely, and all the updates are free for life, and so I just keep throwing those back in there for everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab one of my watercolor brushes that I've made, that again you can get from my Gumroad. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to start just laying in some different color. I can start with this one that I have, because this brush will kind of multiply the color as it goes across. And so I'm just laying in some real streaks, color, that kind of stuff, and just playing around with it, and then maybe switching around to a purplish blue. See how I like that, and can even press Alt and select from the canvas itself. So if there's something I want to have, because that purplish blue is kind of too in your face, so I'm going to run that in there. Can even grab something like a greenish color and kind of lay that in over it as well. And so the main thing here is just trying to break up, if you've seen like galaxy scenes and star scenes, and so something like that, and kind of playing around with it. Can use the overlay brush to kind of put some in here. Now this one is going to have a little bit of hesitation because it does that when I am recording. And if you want to just lay in some other stuff, you can do that. And then I have a blending brush here that allows me to really kind of blend the stuff around and kind of soften it out a little bit. So we have something along those lines, which is just chaotic and crazy looking, but that's fine. That's what I want. Now I'm going to grab my Harsh Chaos palette knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over this lightly and kind of knock some of these edges back a little bit. And you can leave as much there as you want or as little as you want, but I tend to like to just do it in layers. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth here. So I'll come back to my watercolor brushes, brush number 4. in some different. Now in my other one, it's more of a teal sky over it, so do a little bit of that. Now, if this is blending not the way you like it, because these brushes do pick up, then just go over to another layer. Come in. Don't be afraid to go a little darker, especially around the corners. Blue again, up to a real big size. Just kind of plop it in there, like so. Switch back to my palette knife. You can even do like heavy blurred frosting is what I tend to use on my clouds. So if I want to soften and push some of this back, I can do that. Okay. And then you can come over, once you've kind of got it where you're starting to like it, you can come over and mess around with the blend modes. So let's say, for example, if you wanted to do an overlay and get kind of a darker kind of look there, you can do that. You can go with something like soft light, which is going to let a little bit more of the other undercolor show through. Hard light changes it. I wouldn't probably do multiply because that's going to make it really, really dark, but you could do color burn, things like that, and color dodge, a little too light. So what about screen? Way too light. So I'm thinking maybe overlay is a good place to start with this. And then I'm just going to blend it and move it down. So Control Alt down arrow, or I guess that's a Command Option on a Mac. I don't have a Mac, so. And then what I want to do is lay in a little bit more of on top of this because I want to vignette what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to lay some of that in here and there, like so. And I've got this on another monitor so I can see kind of where we're at a little better. And but that works. And again, this is not, because this galaxy part is not the main focus, you don't have to be too crazy with it. Just kind of lay something in to give that implication of what it is. Now the next thing I want to do is make another layer, and I do want to put just a little bit of maybe a tealish color over top. And so I am going to just kind of splotch some of that in here and there. All I'm doing is clicking my mouse so I get these very small splatters. Okay, so I've got that there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of my stencils, and in the stencils that you can get on Gumroad, I have a couple different ones. The one I want, and sorry my computer's being slow, so give me just a second here. Just recently reorganized all my stencils, and of course, like everything else that you organize, once you organize something, you can't find anything. At least that's how it works for me. So I have this one called Sandstone, and I made this from some sandstone that I took. So Alt lets you turn it, Control lets you increase the size, Spacebar lets you drag it, and we're going to make this bigger than the page. Now I'm going to switch back to my palette knife, and I'm going to use Harsh Chaos. And now what I want to do is go over this and throw some Harsh Chaos in it. Like so. Come back to my brush, throw a little bit. This one, I've actually used this one to do lightning before because these cracks that were here. It's a pretty versatile stencil. And again, I use stencils because they just speed up the process for me. You know, it makes life easier instead of having to sit here and draw every little thing. So let's remove this for a second. That may be too harsh still, but let's look at the blend mode because I know I'm going to put this to overlay. So it's just a real soft and subtle kind of thing. And we can come back and push this and pull this a little more if we want to. That's not a problem at all. And you can also, sometimes you can get some really cool looks if you duplicate the layer and, like, say, change it to setting. And sometimes it'll affect it, sometimes not. Alright, so I think all of that works for what I'm wanting. It gives me that watercolor, cloudy kind of look, and that's what I'm going for. So I'm just going to merge all this down to there. Now my next step is I need to make the moon. So making the moon, what you're going to do is you come back over to the custom, and in the new brushes that I just updated, you will find that there is an impasto brush. And so what you want to do is take like a really desaturated bluish color and just kind of start laying in some smears of color. And just really kind of mix it up with these bluish colors. But the main thing is you want to stay with blues, is kind of what you want. And what I'm thinking of is this circle. Okay, so you'll notice that I'm bringing my brush stroke kind of this way. All right. So as I make these marks, I'm kind of thinking about it. Now you can, if you want to look at a picture of the moon, you definitely can, and you know, go try to replicate the moon. I don't think it's overly necessary to do so, but you can if that's what you want. And so it's really doesn't even have to be all of the moon. It can just be kind of some of the parts that we tend to recognize, which are some of these bigger areas on the moon. And just kind of play around with getting the general shape of it as far as like the general look. But this is not something you should really beat yourself up on and try to make it just perfect, because it's a painting. We're not trying to make a NASA map or anything. We're just trying to get the idea of what we want. Okay, so I think that about works. Maybe get a little bit lighter color. A bit lighter. That's too blue. There we go. So just kind of throw some of that in. Or maybe it's being hit like so. Okay. Now Shift S will bring up your selection tool. Go to a hard circle. Bring your cursor to somewhere around in the middle. Then push Shift and Alt and pull out from the center to about the size that you want. About there. I'm going to move it over a little bit. I'm going to take my brush, because I have a few spots right here that are a little outside what I want. I'm going to go to a little bit darker and maybe put just a little bit of a shadow down here, because remember the moon is a sphere, so you want to have a little bit of shadow. And again, just trying to get the implication. Now once I've got that there, I'm going to do Shift Control I, which selects the reverse of what I had, or the inverse, and then I hit delete, and then Control D. Ta-da! I have a moon. You know, that works. Again, it doesn't have to be the exact moon, but that's enough for somebody to look at that and go, oh, it's the moon. And that's what you want, because again, you're painting an impression of the moon. Now, one thing I didn't do in my painting that I wanted to do here and show you is that you can go to Layer Effects, go to Glow, turn it on, and you can increase the radius to maybe like 24, 25, somewhere in there, and the opacity down maybe to about 60 or so, and it gives you that nice soft glow reflection. And again, you can lighten this as much as you want, but I kind of like that. You know, I didn't do it on my other painting. I left it crisp. If you want to leave it crisp, don't do this, but we're just going to leave that on for now. Tell it okay. And so now we've got the moon, and you know, we've got a big moon in the background. If you want to make this lighter, you can do so by just making another layer above it and then going to blend mode. And this is the easiest way to do this. There are other ways, but this is the easiest way. And go to a lighter yellowish color and control click on that layer, then come back up to this one. I went to the airbrush, big and subtle, and kind of make it a little bit brighter. Bring that down. If it's got too much yellow in it, then just go to a pure white. And that'll give it that glow. Okay? So now that you've got that, then you can just deselect it. And you can merge. Control-Alt down arrow to merge that down. And it drops it right onto it. So now we have our star layer, we have our galaxy layer, we have our moon layer, and now we can add in some stars. Okay, so for the stars, I actually have a stencil that I made, which is just literally a bunch of dots. So Control, stretch it out. Shift Control lets me change it, stretch it vertically or horizontally. I'm just trying to get it covered over everything. Now that I've got white selected here, but I don't want a white, like a super white. I'm going to go with kind of a purplish white and hit some of these here. Whoops. I just realized I forgot to do. I meant to put this on a layer under the moon. So there we go. It is behind the moon. It's always important to have your stars behind the moon. If your stars are in front of your moon, something is wrong. Your galaxy, your home is about to be major trouble. Alright, now I'm going to Control, make this a little bit bigger. I moved it over. I'm going to come up brighter, smaller airbrush, and I'm just going to hit here and there. So I'm not doing the whole thing because I don't want it to repeat the pattern, but see how we're starting to get some nice stars developed. Got these stars. The stencil. And there we go. We've got some nice stars in the background. Decent looking moon in the foreground. And if you want to do bigger stars, like in mine, I've got some bigger stars here and there. Just zoom in to 100%. Bring your scale of your airbrush down. Go to a bluish white. Use my mouse because I find this is easier. And just kind of give it a couple of taps. Like so. You can even put constellations in. I've done that before too. Where I put in some constellations and kind of do it. It's my hope that someday I'll be big enough to have Neil deGrasse Tyson say that my stars are wrong. Like he did. So I increased this just a little bit because I wanted to give a little bit more glow. So I just increased the size, try to center it over, and then just give a couple more clicks. Faint ones off in the distance here and there. Okay. Now in mine, I have a star right about here. That is kind of the North Star kind of looking thing. Alright, so it's real bright. I'll make this even brighter. Like so. Then I can grab the tendrils, bring that way down. And then if I want, all I gotta do is Control and click Shift to make it perfectly straight up and down. Get that nice kind of starburst effect for it, like so. So you can do that to get the kind of the look that you want of the star. Kind of shining. You can even play around with this and do kind of that, lens flare if you want to. Alright, so then you can come back to your brush, go in here with the blur, and just kind of soften it around. All I'm doing is going in a circle. And soften it kind of like so. So that's one of those things you can play around with as much as you want to get that kind of look that you want. So, feel free. I don't want this video to be super long, so I'm just trying to make sure to get that there, and sorry for coughing. Alright, so I've got that there. And we've got our moon. So I want to have a reflection of the moon, so I'm just going to duplicate it. Get my eyes to focus. And then I'm going to do Control Shift Alt T. I'm going to flip it vertically. I'm going to move it down. Okay. We're going to obliterate most of this, so don't worry about it too much. Alright, so I've got that there. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I want to add a between these two, because I want to start adding in my grasses and stuff like that for the water. Okay, so we're going to do that part, and put my wolf. So I made a wolf stencil, just a very quick painted wolf stencil that I could use. On the size just a little bit. My everlasting oil, just because it's faster. Go to a black. Change. And just kind of throw this in here. But I need reversed. Give me a second here. I'm just going to add some of that black over it. Now you'll notice too that left some different color here and there, and it left some texture. That's perfectly fine. If you don't want the texture there, you can go back over and smooth it out. We're actually going to add a lot more texture to this guy, so I'm not worried about it. Now I'm going to flip the stencil vertically. Bring it down. Another layer. Put it below him. You can color all of it in if you want to. You don't have to, because we're going to be obliterating parts of it. So you can also just kind of blend the color around to break up the look of it, soften it here and there. Now I'm going to hide this stencil. I'm not going to get rid of it. And so we've got that there. Now the other thing is that in my Gumroad stencils, we have for water ripples. Okay, invert this because I want it towards the back, and Shift Control, stretch it out towards that water line, like so. I'm going to add a layer, and I just add the layers so that way it gives me a chance if I don't like something I can undo it. Grab this blue from the moon, it's reflecting the, and then I can brush and just add in some smears of oil paint. Switch to my knife, kind of smear it back and forth. Not getting enough smear out of it, increase it. Go vertical, back and forth. Hide it, take a look at it, Control Z to bring it back. You can also use these same ripples, you can invert it like so, then take a dark color from up here. Now I prefer to kind of start picking from the image itself, so that way you're getting a little bit more color harmony with it. And then, but once you've got that, you can then go back to your brushes, and you can even go down to the watercolor. Works really good. That's the one I tend to use for a lot of things. And start kind of laying in the darker here and there. It really, the more you can see this reflection, the stiller the water is. Okay, so that's something to think about. And then just kind of up and down, back and forth. And all we're doing is smearing it. You can also come back down to the moon layer here, up and down, and back and forth. that stencil is still going to affect it because the stencil is over every layer. You can do the same for the wolf. Like so. See how that starts to give you that feeling of it really kind of sitting in there. Now we're going to come back and mess around with this some more. So we've got that there, and because basically what I say, we're going to come back and mess with this more. We're going to add some more highlights and make this really pop in here. Okay, so let's hide this stencil for now. So we're going to hide the stencil. And the reason we're not removing it and we're hiding it is because if we remove it and we wanted to bring it back, we would have to try to line it up. So just by hiding it, it is staying where it was. And then when we show it again, it's right where we had it. We don't have to try and line it back up. Okay. So what we need to do now is a couple different things. Let's add some foliage and stuff around here. So to our watercolor brushes. And one of the new ones that I put, one of the new ones that I put on here were these leaf brushes. Bush colors and stuff really fast. And all I'm doing is just going around the edge here. And then I have this other one, so I can break it up a little bit as far as the look and the feel. Bring the sides back down. You can even go straight across, like so. And just kind of a little bit in the bottom, like so. And then what you can do is you can take your ink brush. For this, I like to use, either the thick liner or smoothed inking. Smoothed inking works great. I just turn off the square head, and staying with this black, I'm just going to throw in some quick grasses and stuff like that. Because you can see how that's pushing all of that really back. This is one of those things I think that you can just, it's almost impossible to add too much. I mean, you could, I guess, but, it just kind of adds to the overall flavor. All right, so I've got that there. Now I want to make him not look so stenciled. So I'm going to come back to my brushes and go down to my old brush, which this one is just designed to be kind of a, like an old worn out brush, so the bristles are kind of apart. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go thinking about how the fur would lay around this guy. I want to rough up his silhouette. Fortunately, I have a very hairy dog, so I tend to know exactly which way this hair is going to lay, because she has hair everywhere. Okay. Now again, you can do this one on another layer if you want to have a bit more control over it. Like if you're worried you're going to mess something up, just do it on another layer, and that way you can erase and undo stuff. So nothing to worry about at all. Alright, so then I'm going to switch over to my pencil, and I'm going to go along that same part and kind of add some hair here and there. A little bit more controlled. The other one's a little random, but I want that randomness. So he's just a shaggy. Speaking of my dog, you can probably hear her barking. She just decided to bark. And she's a good girl, but she's part Great Pyrenees, so she barks a lot. And having this hair stick out here is what really kind of sells that looking up and the hair poking out. So you can make him as shaggy or as clean shaven as you want. So it's really up to you. Speaking of which, if you decide, hey, that's a little much, go back to your old brush, put it on eraser mode, and kind of stroke back in to soften it. Okay. It's like if you've got a little bit more there than you want, and then go back to something like your pencil and kind of correct any over erase that was there. But that's a great way to kind of capture in the light coming through and that kind of stuff. Okay. So then we've got that fella. He's just howling his brains out right there. All right, so let's go back up to Tools, Stencil Options, Show All Stencils. And we don't need this one still, so we can hide that. So we've got this one here. Let's invert it back to where it was. Okay, zoom in, move the now if you're trying to move this, you can spacebar, click, and you drag the canvas. But be careful you don't grab the stencil, because otherwise you're going to move the stencil and not the canvas. Okay, so let's put this above here. I'm going to go to my pencil. I'm going to switch to pretty much a pure white. And I'm just going to go along and add in. You can do this with chalk if you want as well, like if you want a bigger type thing like that. Let's hide the stencil so we can get that look there, and then come back up a little bit above the darkest spot and just kind of put in a ripple for the shoreline, like so. Okay. So if you want to see the whole thing, just push tab and that removes your boxes. So it'll give you a good view of how it all looks. And, you know, that's pretty much the piece reproduced. So the border is the next thing around. So let's do that. I don't like to leave this just flat if I'm going to make prints and stuff. I don't know why, it's just a personal preference. You know, just do what you want. But I like to have a broken up edge. So that's what I'm saying. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my old brush. I am on a new layer. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to bring my brush size up, shift, drag right. I am on pure white. And now what I'm gonna do is I am just going to go around, paint a border, and scrunch it in. You get this kind of rough border. Break up your rhythm. Come over a little further than you expect, like so. Like so. Okay, switch this back to eraser mode. And then come back and you can just kind of tap in any that you want. So if you want to, like, hey, this was too thick here, or I really want to push that back there, you can do that. And you can switch to erase mode in some of these other brushes. Okay, you don't have to just use the old brush, but I find it works pretty good. So it just makes life easier. But like, for example, if you want to use the impasto and switch to eraser mode, you can. Gives you a totally different look, but it can give you some interesting breakups in the white. I'm just tapping, that's all I'm doing, letting the brush do the work. Okay, and then from there, again, it's just a matter of how much you want to add that border, not have that border. One thing I will recommend is that if you're going to have it there, to make sure on the edge a little bit you have it more solid, just around the very, very edge. And the reason for that is so that when you have prints made, there's no abrupt cut off on this edge. There we go. All right. So then from here, it's really just a matter of playing around with anything that you want to fix. So like, for example, if you want your moon a little brighter, you can do that. So you can come over here, make another layer, and then the same thing that we did before, just put it on overlay. Pretty much a white. You can select Control Enter to select that right there. And it's not a bad thing to maybe make it a little bit brighter right here behind this guy so that he shows up a little more. So, and you can use the Impasto brush if you want to get a little bit of that same texture. Like so. It's really kind of up to you how much you want to have this show, so you could soften it all back like so. And, oops. Oh, I just realized I was doing that on the wrong layer. I was wondering why I wasn't looking as bright. Let me undo that. I forgot that when you click the layer, it moves you down to that layer, and I wasn't paying attention. So on the correct layer, you can do all of that again. Like so. And switching over to like Harsh Chaos. Bring it in there. You can go back to your brush and use the erase mode to kind of push back against some of that feeling of back to the Harsh Chaos. You get kind of that impact crater looking kind of thing. You can just simply do a couple of those, switch over like so. Blast. So, all right. And then the only other thing I would say of maybe doing is I personally would want to add some more stars. So you can use other stencils. This Pebbles one. And you got to be careful with this one. You don't want to put all of this in there. But if you wanted to have brighter ones here and there. And maybe like, I don't like that, which I kind of don't. And just go back, erase it, or undo it. But there's a number of ways that you can do it. So you can just come in with, like we did before, with the airbrush tool, add in a few spots here and there, like so. You can zoom in on those. Go to something like your inking tool and just touch. Smooth. Turn off the square head. And just add in to look. Maybe soften it back a little bit. Alright, so, this is the point where you can just really overdo stuff and pitter and putter around with it. But that's how to create this picture, how to do the entire paint. Like I said, the majority of these stencils and brushes and everything else are in my Gumroad page. I have a lot more lessons like this over on Patreon. If you want to come over there, it's $3 a month. You can come over and support the channel there and help out. Leave any comments or questions below. I do my best to answer them as fast as I can. So I'll get to them just as soon as I can. But I think overall that kind of walks through doing this process. So you can see, like, here's the original. Here's this one. If there's colors that you want to change or brighten up, then it's really just a matter of adding a layer with an overlay, lightening some of this up, adding in some different colors. Some, like, maybe you want to add in some of those blues, for example. Like if you wanted to come in here and add in a blend mode, soft light, and then add maybe some extra color here and there, and so give it a little bit more pop. Just make sure if you do that, do a little bit of it down the bottom, down here, so that you get a little bit of that reflection. Okay. But that's really it. That's how you do this entire thing. Once you're done with it, just save it, and then you should have something good to go. Just don't put prints of it up on Redbubble and stuff. I don't care, do whatever. But if you want to help support the channel, like I said, feel free to jump over there and buy something, or join me on Patreon. Thanks for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. And again, leave any questions, thoughts, and comments below. Thanks so much.